that has emerged in the last few quarters, which is that if we look at the region and we look at the surrounding jurisdictions like the state, Montgomery County actually is creeping up. Our labor force is growing at a faster rate over the last year than some of our other neighboring regions and some of our part of the regions that we're surrounded, that we're within. So we're not up to Washington D.C.'s rate, but we are a little bit faster than the state of Maryland overall. And we are a little bit faster than the D.C. Metro overall, and we are at this point growing faster than our neighboring Northern Virginia jurisdiction. So, again, it's not a breakneck pace of labor force recovery, but there does seem to be a little bit of a shift where the Prince George's and Montgomery County seem to be upping the pace a little bit. So I'm not exactly sure what's behind that or, what dynamic that reflects, but just wanted to point that out that there's a little bit of a change in that. So we can move on to, I don't think the next slide is about occupations, which I'm not going to spend much time on because that doesn't, and just the labor force, that was not in the report. That was just some added, but in future we can consider, adding those kinds of details to the report. And so, occupation's not going to spend much time on this because it's, again, generally the same. Now, with jobs by major industry sector, there has been a bit of a shift in these. And so we had seen, when we've been looking at, just if you look at the year to year, March 2023 to March 2024, for the previous, really since the pandemic, most of our really large, important sectors, professional, scientific, and technical services, and then their subsectors, and then leisure and hospitality, and its subsector of food services and drinking places, those had been consistently increasing in employment year over year. What we've now seen is 2 consecutive quarters of a slight decrease in employment from in the year over year part. So now that's not to say, again, that's just 2 quarters. Things go up and down all the time, but that is there's at least 2 quarters of that where we've kind of seen that kind of stagnate a bit. Again, this is high level. We don't know the reasons or the dynamics behind that, but that's just a trend to keep an eye on. And I think now we'll switch it over to
Bill Tompkins, MCEDC. Just a comment on that. We actually met with several life sciences companies a couple of weeks ago, and the good news about what's happening here is that you see significant growth in the life sciences sector, so that they feel that we are really poised to compete with other jurisdictions, and I'm talking about outside of the DMV. We've always talked about the talent that is here, but the fact that we're bringing more talent in those particular sectors makes it more attractive and viable for companies who are looking to expand here in that particular jurisdiction, and that's one of our lead industries that we focus on.
So I think we can hand it over to Frankie for real estate.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself in terms of speaking before you. I'm Frankie Clogston, and I'm the Vice President of Research and Policy at MCEDC, and I've been in that role since January, but I kind of more involved in the quarterly indicators in this round. So I look forward to speaking today and, perhaps more in the future before you. And the topic that I'll look at, the portion of our indicators is real estate. Later I'll talk a little bit about venture capital, but with respect to real estate and development, and that's our first slide there, that's a slide that you normally see, and it's indicating that for our office market, we're showing an increase which is about 2% year over year to $31.56 gross rent per square feet, and it's about a 3% increase when it comes to the retail sector to $33.50. The vacancy has gone up 1.4% quarter one over the first quarter of last year. So that is an uptick. That's partially due to companies moving into smaller spaces. So there's a smaller footprint, which is related to onset of the hybrid work environment. Next slide. This is longitudinal. We said we wanted to look back, but we'll probably look back even further in the future, which is, I think, what Bilal mentioned. We did have an earlier session where we looked further back at vacancy, and you could, of course, see that we'd been a healthier market, but then there was a Great Recession, and we were not so healthy market, and then COVID hit, and you're seeing that this is the vacancy rate here from 2020 Q1 at 12.3%. Which has increased to 18.3%. And that, by the way, that 18.3%, that's 2024 quarter two, and that's to date information, because I pulled this last week. And I'm just noting that because in the prior slide, it's had 18.2, which was quarter one. So just to let you know why that number.
Yeah, so appreciate that clarification that since the slides were produced, it went from 18.2 to 18.3. But my question is about the CBRE report that said Q1 had a, what was it? Q1 has a 21.9% vacancy rate.
Okay.
What is the discrepancy there?
Well, that's something we can look into. We tend to draw from CoStar, which is kind of real time. That's our base. But go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's using different data sources. So what we have talked about is taking both CBRE and JLL, who also put out a report, and CoStar, and looking at all three together so that we can look at the comparisons and why they're dramatic or not so dramatic differences.
Sure. And I'll just say, next week we are having the public hearing on the MOVE Act, introduced by this entire committee. So we can wrestle with the discrepancy, but I think we can all agree that the number is too high, and so we'll figure that out moving on forward. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be more. Be good to be kind of more holistic and take a look at those different sources and see what their assumptions are, so that we can try to help making we can reconcile, and understand what we're looking at.
Great, thank you.
Before we move on, Councilmember Balkin.
Yeah, just a further clarification. In the prior slide, can you just, what the difference between the availability rate and the vacancy rate?
Does anybody want to clarify who's more of a real estate market expert? I think I could proffer, but what you want to talk? Go ahead. Because it's a
No, you need to please come to the front.
You have to speak in a microphone.
And introduce yourself.
The availability rate is basically,
Please introduce yourself.
excuse me, I'm David Berry, research consultant. I've worked with Bill for nearly 3 years. And the availability rate is basically the vacancy rate on the last day of the month when leases come up. So it's not necessarily an indicator that you have to use, but it's usually higher because vacancies begin to happen that then get filled. So it's a minor difference. I'd really focus on the overall vacancy.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, thanks.
And you don't have utilization rate?
I have to look.
Because those are key for us, and we had a whole, discussion on them a few months ago. We want to make sure that the buildings are not just leased, but if they're actually occupants, because that will impact the neighborhood. People who go out and buy food, go to the restaurants, and the spending that they're having as employees in the area. So that's really important for us. With that, let's just continue the presentation and try to hold questions until the end.
Okay, well, I'm taking notes on all these indicators, which are ones we can certainly add to future reports if these metrics are helpful for you. Thank you. Okay, so the next slide, and I'll just talk through it a little bit, looks at submarkets. We wanted you to see what was happening in the submarkets, and this is organized with Bethesda Chevy Chase at the bottom because it has the highest vacancy rate in the current 2024 quarter to date of 24.7%, and then you have the lowest rate being the I-270 corridor, which is less than 5%, and a couple things about these which show what's been happening over the last year, quarter 1 23 to quarter 1 24. North Bethesda has had basically a decrease. They started at 23.3% in the first quarter of last year, and they decreased to 18.4%. So they're the ones that had the biggest decrease. That would be the North Bethesda Potomac market. And Germantown has had the biggest increase in their vacancy rate from 17.4% to 22.4%. And that's to date, quarter two to date. So that's kind of an overall view. We want to look in the future, do deep dives into submarkets for various indicators. And what we're going to see, however, is that it's often the case that it is a couple properties that are constituting a large share and of the vacancy, and that can explain that. And Ben is going to talk more about those particular properties in a couple of the submarkets. Next slide.
So if we go, okay. So also before I get into this, just one quick clarification on the vacancy versus availability. Availability may also mean that in a lot of cases there's a lease signed, but it may be available for sublease. So it's just whether there's it's not vacant in the sense that there's somebody paying for it, but it may be not necessarily used, and it's somebody's trying to rent it out, which so that could lead, and that's kind of important for this discussion, because what we wanted to do is we were kind of surprised that the Bethesda Chevy Chase market had the actually highest vacancy rate of all of the submarkets here, and so we looked into some individual buildings. I don't think we have any full analysis to know exactly what's happening. We do think that there's probably some sort of as we've all expected, and we've seen kind of trickle in a bit of a reset with the office market, which probably won't end for a while and could get worse. But it could be that kind of this market, which has always traditionally been our strongest, investors have seen the most value in it, may be the place where it's happening first. So that's kind of one of our I guess guesses for why we may be seeing such a high vacancy rate in this market. Just wanted to get into some of the individual buildings so we can see what's going on, because it's not all space that's just sitting there with nothing happening. A lot of these actually have, well, at least some of them have been leased up in the time that while this data was compiled for quarter one, have since signed leases or have signed the lease, but not the occupant hasn't moved in yet. So one of the things we see, like with the Avocet, which you can see is one of the more vacant buildings there, I think as you might be aware, they are kind of came online right around the pandemic, but what a lot of large newer buildings are doing is switching to, they're thinking about smaller spec spaces, so they're really switching to marketing those and have been able to, with some success, to kind of rent those out to companies that are looking to downsize from what were previously larger office spaces. So there is a bit of that, it's kind of like a net decrease in overall office space, but there is some space getting taken up by that phenomenon. 7501 Wisconsin, Westat has actually since signed a lease for there, and then they're downsizing from their Rockville headquarters, which looks like it which looks like it will be becoming biotech. Just you're driving a little fast there, so. And then 7700 Wisconsin, they have in the meantime signed a company has signed a 16,000 square foot lease. So not a huge portion, but again a smaller portion of what of their total space there. And then just for some additional context, the Flats 8300 which is not office, it's residential with retail, but that was sold for a significantly lower price than it was purchased just a few years ago. So that is obviously has a lot of people concerned in the market there. So there is definitely something going on, but there also underneath it there is activity, and there still is leasing, and there still is some movement in the market. If you want to move to, just quickly, we can talk about just Silver Spring, a few buildings at Silver Spring for context. the Inventa Place, which formerly the Discovery Center, that has been, it's obviously accounts for a lot of vacant space, but we know that's been a problem since even well before the pandemic. That was since Discovery left, and that's just continuing to go on. 1100 Wayne, which I think is Station Square, was actually set to be auctioned, which again I think we'll probably be seeing, but for some reason was canceled, and no reason was given why this. So I guess that's kind of remains to be seen what is going to happen with that property. So yeah, that's just all a quick just rundown, just for some extra context. Sometimes it helps in these submarkets. They can be so heavily influenced by one or two transactions. It helps to actually look at what's going on under the larger numbers. So that's what we did there. And then I think we're going to move on to residential real estate. Correct?
Yeah, I will be pretty fast on residential real estate. The trends that kind of are projected here are not surprising. The gross rent per unit is increasing from 2000 to 2055, and the vacancy has gone up, but less year over year, just under 1%. Next slide. Home sales, we still are seeing a sale price that is, a rate that's over inflation, 10.2%, and active listings have gone up 12.7%. So there's a lot happening in the market, and the listing prices are still actually the sold price is actually still exceeding the listing price by just a bit. Next slide. So I'm going to just switch gears a little bit and talk about venture capital. And I think we'll start with a trend that is not surprising and is one that is happening nationwide due to the impact of higher interest rates. And that is that venture capital investment is lower. There were 16 deals over the quarter, and constituting 128.6 million. And I will talk about some of those deals. The good news is they are in our sectors that are strong for us, so they're right in our pocket. Next slide. A Company Health was the biggest deal of 56.0 million, and that's a healthcare platform that secures low-income people with virtual or at-home care, so that's kind of in the home care services market. High Labs, Limber, Agnovus, those are more biotech companies, and High Labs, for example, brands itself as being AI-powered. So we are at the right intersection when we're talking about technology and healthcare, and AI, and we have IHC, of course, in our county. The One Dwell Well Analytics is the outlier in this group. It is a high-tech home security company. It's also pitching itself as AI-driven sensor company. Next slide. And this slide is really just grouping or associating rather the sectors with what I just mentioned, and again showing that the investment that we're seeing is in the biotech sector principally.
Okay, so I'm going to run through the special section in the indicators report, which is just looking at Montgomery County's industrial competitive analysis. I also realize I don't think I stated my name for the record, so I think I'll go back and correct that. So I'm Ben Kraft. I'm a research planner with Montgomery County Planning, and now I'll go on to the competitive analysis. So what this really is looking at, it's most of what it finds is kind of a lot of things, confirms what we already know about our competitive industries. But what this is looking at metrics that really focus on the idea of agglomeration. So they mainly measure how big an industry is to reflect this idea that industries tend to cluster in space, and that for competitive reasons, and that industries that cluster tend to be more competitive, more productive, and more, outcompete smaller clusters in other regions. So we continually see this, and that's what these metrics really capture. So if we go to This is just one of the most basic metrics of competitive advantage called a location quotient, and what it measures is the size of the local industry relative to its size nationwide, or the average size that we would expect. So you can go through the list and see some of our industries we would expect to be that are large here compared to other places around the nation. The second two, I'll leave the top one just for a moment, but if we go down to the second two, scientific research and development services, pharmaceutical and medicinal manufacturing, that's basically our life sciences industry, with a few extra things thrown in there. These are broad industrial categories, so we can't really, there's a lot of diversity that you can't really capture with these metrics. But those are about 5 to 6 times, in Montgomery County, it's about 5 to 6 times larger than it would be in the average county of the country. So as we know, those are large, they're clustered, they're consolidated here. A lot of that is in the Great Seneca area that you'll be talking about soon. If we go a little bit farther down, skipping to the computer systems and design related services, that is basically what we would call the tech sector. Even a lot of our hospitality tech gets, classified in there because it's primarily for the purposes of the industrial classification system, it's software development and design. It wouldn't be in the hospitality sector. And then we have our management, scientific, technical consulting, which is it's consulting, and we are fairly competitive in those. The most large regions are. It's really the kind of backbone of what we would call knowledge work these days. So again, we should expect to have a large concentration in that. And then a lot of the rest of it flows from the federal government, which is about, it's a fairly high location quotient, and then all of the related industries. There's philanthropy, there is the trade associations and unions, there is the social advocacy groups. So one of the things that illustrates is that one cluster may kind of beget concentrations and competitiveness in other clusters. So in some ways you could call that kind of one larger super cluster, because they're all reliant and dependent on each other, and they kind of focus together, and they're fairly cohesive. So just depends on how you classify things. But in this sense, you can kind of look at all those together. So just moving back to the communications equipment manufacturing. So that is actually by these criteria, and again, these are only our traded industries, so only our exporting industries, leaving out the locally serving ones here, with at least, I think it was 1,000 jobs in 2023. So I cut, very small industries I didn't add on the list, but it's actually our most, by this metric, competitive industry. It's a very broad industry. One of the things I think it's one of the largest parts of it is actually just cable broadcast TV. So something like, Comcast or Cox. Yeah, well, I will talk about Comsat in a second. So yeah, it's really that, but it's so broad that there's a lot of other things in it that are not necessarily that, because at this day and age, you probably wouldn't want to have a great, specialty in that industry. But what it looks like is going on in ours is a lot of different companies, some of which, so there's Hughes Network Systems, which is actually, the lineage of which can be traced back to Comsat. Which I think is interesting, because that's how a lot of tech sectors end up starting. I mean, in Silicon Valley, it's basically, to really overgeneralize, it's all a big spin-off off of the first Fairchild Industries, which was an early semiconductor company there. That is how these industries emerge. And so Hughes Network Systems, they do consumer satellite and satellite internet and TV services, but they also have other applications, and I believe they do some defense contracting and on other kinds of systems. We have a few other companies. We even have, I think, if you're familiar with Wabtec, which is like a kind of subsidiary of what used to be Westinghouse, and the specific branch here seems to do like railway communication technologies. So kind of a niche, but it still falls under the same industrial classification. So these are high tech. These are doing really cutting edge technology, and under this banner of communications equipment manufacturing. So this is not, I don't, and this is where you kind of have to go beyond the metrics and really find out what's going on and talk to people and do a little bit more. But I guess just for the purposes of this report, I wanted to just kind of put that out there, and, I put it on the radar, no pun intended, but just to show that it's out there and it could be an interesting.
This is great, Dr. Kraft. Do you have the opposite? Like, these are the most competitive. Mm-hmm. We get that. Do you have the opposite of, like, the least competitive companies that we have in Montgomery County?
It's tough. I don't know from an industry or company perspective. I'm not really sure. Like, there's plenty of things we have nothing. We don't make cars. We don't. There's so in that sense, like, you can't have a location quotient below 0 because that's just the bottom bounds of it. So what I'll talk about is, so in some of those things, it's like, that we just, not every, you're not going to have every type of economic activity in every county. But what I will talk about as we move forward is like how some of these may, this is just a location quotient, but that's static. That doesn't tell you what the trajectory of those industries is. So you might be very competitive in an industry that's declining. And this is like what happened in the Rust Belt. Very competitive, high, and still have very high location quotients in certain manufacturing industries. But, those industries are not providing increasing employment as you go along. It's actually the other way around. So that's really what, I guess we can probably move on to the next slide and we can see some of that. So this is just looking at, on the vertical axis, you have the location quotient. On the horizontal axis, you have the growth rate from 2013 to 2023, and the size of the bubble is the actual employment size of the industry. So, this is where you see, most of our competitive industries are growing. As we can see, federal government, which we've noted here, it's been noted many times, it's not growing very rapidly, if at all. And that, so we can't, so it's something you can't really rely on as going to, be the source of our growth in the future. And I think everyone's kind of on the same page of that, where there's this need for diversification. Our scientific research and development services, that kind of falls firmly into that high location quotient, fairly high growth. So we can see that. Some of our others are not necessarily, they're all growing. The trade association group is not necessarily, that's seen some negative growth, and that could be something to that, there might be downsizing going on in that. It probably has to do with other things going on in the specific industries that they represent. But yeah, so most of these are growing, some faster than others. Communications equipment manufacturing, it is shrinking. Again, that's something I can't really tell from this data. I don't know what's happening with the specific companies that fall under that. It would be, so it's something that if it is to be pursued, we should be cautious about, because we don't know what the future, trajectory and prospects for that industry are. And then if we move on we can go a little bit farther into shift share. So this is just adding a little bit more information to this discussion and a little bit more context. So this is showing similar things about cluster size, but what it's also doing is accounting for both the trajectory of the industry itself and the national growth, just the overall job growth in the country. Because what you would want to see for your local industry to be competitive, you would want to see it both keeping up with that industry nationally and with just overall job growth rates. That's kind of what you would expect. And so that you kind of add those together and you get the expected growth. And then so that's both the industrial mix effect is the first part, the national growth effect is the second part, farther, that's in the columns over to the right. And then you can kind of get your local expected growth effect. And you can measure your actual growth relative to that. Are we keeping up with what we would expect given those trends, or are we falling behind? And so, in Montgomery County, we are falling behind in a lot of them. Again, this is a simple metric. There's reasons for this, just like we've discussed with other reports and kind of other forums about this. It's hard as a large, mature county to continually be outpacing both of those effects. So we also have a labor force issue. We have a housing problem. So it's places that have other places are going, the wheels are going to be greased a little bit for them to be growing faster. And also there's like a really long trajectory we should be thinking about these on. This is only about 10 years. So while we have lower, reduced competitive effects in a lot of these things, we certainly could be growing faster, but I also don't want to present this as like some sort of super alarming statistic, because there are just some other things that affect that. But we do, for example, in pharmaceutical and medicine manufacturing, life sciences, that is, Montgomery County is really very competitive in that, and has been for a while. So that's good news there. So that's all just to just add increasingly more context to this idea of industrial competitiveness and what our local specializations and our local competitive industries are. And again, so we can kind of go to the next slide and finish off there. So this has been very high level. Maybe some grounds for more exploration and more thought, but for the most part, it's really, I think, just confirms, it's another way of looking at and confirming what our competitive industries are. And I think our strategies, both at the county level, at MCEDC, really reflect that. Now, there's target industries. Most of them fall under these, but they're just kind of named and classified in a more qualitative way. And that's also fine. This is just, we're stuck with the way that the statistical agencies classify these industries, which hasn't always kept up with what we think of as industries. Some are thriving, others may be held back. Again, there's so many variables to why our industries may not be growing quickly that it's hard to capture in one thing. But some of the overall things that as a county we probably can, weigh in on, such as housing and, labor force, probably have something to do with it. It's hard for us to change if they're just not running their business as well. That's kind of on them. But, it's sort of a combination of all of those. And so it's kind of lays the groundwork for possible deeper explorations, probably of a more qualitative sort, more kind of one-on-one type of anecdotal looking at things. So I think that will conclude our report for this quarter. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for Montgomery Planning and the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. I'm going to ask if anybody has questions. We can start. Before I open it up, at the end of the day, Montgomery County does invest in making sure our businesses are successful. We want to see anybody who wants to move here or open a business here to be successful. Like, we even tell people that before you sign a lease, let us see it. We have the business center. We have Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. We have places, and we spend money and resources to make sure that you are successful. So that is for our benefit. And as Councilmember Glass mentioned, we're going to be seeing the MOVE program coming up that deals with, attracting employees, attracting businesses to come here, and helping people pay, the rent, so they can stay and expand in Montgomery County. Beyond that, obviously, we're looking forward to ideas and things that we should be doing proactively to ensure that we continue to be a county that is welcoming all in that business aspect. So we're going to start with Councilmember Balcom. Do you have a question, Councilmember Sells? And then we're going to end with Councilmember Glass. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the data. So I like the location quotient. It's very hard to understand. So I think that the explanation, is a good explanation about what it means. So I think that a couple things on that. The communications equipment manufacturing may not be one of our major target industries, but geographically, it's very important to the North I-270 corridor, right? And so I think that it would be interesting to see the geography of understanding the clusters not necessarily to be reported on a quarterly basis, but for really understanding the picture of where the jobs are in Montgomery County, and the importance to the hyperlocal communities, right? And so, for instance, is a cluster or an industry countywide, or is it a very specific, life sciences, the equipment, hospitality? I just think that that's interesting for the local economy and jobs and commuting patterns, et cetera. So I think that was an interesting point. And then the other point about the quotient, I understand that 1 is the national standard, but it's hard to say, okay, is 6.99 good, or how good is it? So I think that for our target industries, I think that what would be helpful is to know what, so for instance, the bioscience or R&D, what areas of the country have higher quotients, and how much higher are those quotients? Right. So if we're at a 7.3, is, research triangle at a 27, or is it at a 9 kind of thing? I think that's interesting.
Yeah, we can absolutely look at that. Typically it's usually about 1.5 is, there's no real agreement about, like, if you're above 1.5, that's typically considered good, fairly competitive. You're absolutely right, though, as you get into the handful of places you can name, like that have competitive life science clusters, some of them will have higher ones than us. That being said, ours is, I think, 5 or 6 is that's a pretty, it's hard to hit that number. That's pretty competitive. But yeah, I'm sure the Bay Area would be higher than that. I can definitely look at that.
Let me comment on that, because I just looked at it a couple of weeks ago, and it was a CBRE report, which was very telling. It looked at the top 32 markets across the country. In this case, it was looking at life sciences. And to your point, I wanted to know, are we competing with Boston in the right way, or San Francisco? Boston is off the charts when it comes to life sciences. There are 3 industries that they tend to measure with the location quotients. But it also told me where our real competition is, where we need to pay attention. So you got to look at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when it comes to life sciences. And so this information is very telling in the sense that it says we're really good, or we have a lot of competition. And the reason I bring up Boston is that it's going to be hard to compete with Boston, because they have such a huge concentration of life sciences companies and infrastructure. But then you start looking around the country to figure out what should the norm be. And so that's what we're actually doing. Right.
And to your point, the people who are just below us in the quotient, those are the people that we also need to focus on too. So.
And that's why we've got to continue to actually compete. When we went to the bio conference, I know we're talking a lot about life sciences, but the bio conference in San Diego 2 weeks ago, what was bothersome is that you had states like Oregon, Michigan, South Carolina, all kinds of states trying to claim that that's where you should have your life sciences offices or headquarters or growth. So it's an industry that is growing like crazy, but how do we keep it concentrated such that we have that special concentration here and don't lose that opportunity to nascent markets that you would have never expected to go after that particular industry?
Good. Just a couple other brief points. The venture capital was the one that sticks out, most in the report in terms of the downside. And understandably, presumably, the interest rates are affecting everyone. But again, looking at a comparison, I'm assuming that this is all across the country, but are other areas of the country getting a bigger piece of the pie? I think is important to look at. And then the last point, vacancy rates. I appreciate that the story behind the numbers in terms of what's happening in Bethesda vacancy and Silver Spring. Given that Germantown has the largest increase in vacancy, it would be interesting to look at that. I know that there are a couple properties that are coming offline, and I'm wondering if that was why that happened in Germantown. Yeah.
Very important.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Member Sales.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the briefing. I'm glad that our first meeting post-budget is talking about how we've been doing, and we're getting a briefing on our first quarter projections and what's happening, so we can better plan. And given the passage of the Jobs Initiative and the introduction of our MOVE initiative, I think this will all help bolster our economic growth and hopefully bring us back towards our pre-pandemic numbers. Something that surprised me, since we've never seen this before, we had a pretty contentious budget season with regards to our MCPS budget. And so we were met with a lot of concerns regarding teacher shortages. And so this is the first time I've seen our educators mentioned on job growth. And, we made significant investments in our education system, both budget years that we've been on the council since we've started this economic development committee. And just wanted to know if there's any information you can share on what contributed to the elementary school teachers having the highest job growth, given that housing is still expensive. Are they commuting? I don't know if there's anything you can share about where they're at.
I believe that the elementary school teachers and also secondary school, like a lot of these, I believe we used to have, I think even preschool teachers and day and childcare have been on this list recently. So they've consistently, I believe, been at some point in our top growing occupations. That's a good question, because I don't know exactly why there is such robust, because you would think you kind of hire for the year and you're just, that's how many teachers you have, and then, it changes every year. So I don't know exactly why. But I do think that, one thing I do want to clarify with this data, this is at place jobs. So these are workers, these are people that work in the county as elementary school teachers. They may live elsewhere. Yeah. So it doesn't really tell us exactly where they live and what their commutes are like. But we do, and I think off the top of my head, looking at the location quotients, before I removed all of the, locally serving industries, which would be education, I do believe we have a fairly high, public school location quotient, which means that relative to the average place, we employ a lot of people in public schools. Now, of course, that's not always, that a lot of that is administrative and, other sort of things that aren't just teachers, but, that is, something that we also have. But yes, it's a good, we can look more into that. I'm not sure why there's this kind of continued increase in elementary school teacher employment.
Okay. And are we tracking information on whether the employees that are joining and leaving the workforce are new to the area, leaving the area, or are we attracting new folks? Are we able to track and monitor that information?
That is a very difficult thing to track. It's not in the public data that this comes from, just the basic statistics. It's even, and we've looked at migration data, various, there's ways to do that, but it's also very hard to match that with specific occupations. And, it's one of those things I wish we could track, but it's very hard.
But we do try to make some assumptions. So I think at the last time we did talk about migration data, we do look at that. That's important. And the challenge is breaking it down by industry. So we take some guesses. Where are we losing? Where are we gaining? And is it a particular industry? But most of that is an assumption that you're making, like looking at the data we saw earlier in terms of our location quotients. If we're not growing as fast as the data would suggest, then that says to me that there are more people going elsewhere. But this is all, they're suppositions. And the question is, are we able to satisfy the needs of the business community? So that's what I always come back to. And what we do want to watch very carefully is to make sure that businesses are not having problems growing because they don't have customers here. It's because they don't have enough employees to satisfy the growth. So that's why it does make sense to pay more attention to that.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can look at the industries where people are filing unemployment claims and see where we're seeing huge job loss in a particular industry, or particular geographic region of the county, if we can look at it that way to see if we can address any trends. So if we can follow.
We can try to break that down a little bit.
Perfect. Okay.
A little bit more.
And then I don't know if these jobs are broken down in terms of full-time or part-time, or are these mostly jobs with benefits? Is this gig economy jobs? So we know where we're trending with our job growth and where we need to do better.
I believe for the most, for this is JobsEQ, which I'm not. I believe they mostly pull from public data, but in which case it tends to be both full-time and part-time. So we don't really have a great breakdown. It's basically if you're usually if you're a W-2 employee, or if you're paying if you're paying into the unemployment insurance program. So what it's usually not capturing is gig workers. That is not. There isn't a great way to reflect those at this point. So that's a lot. That's a lot of employment.
Yes, an area we should be looking into, because a lot of people are going into those temporary short-term jobs. And then, are there any particular groups that we've seen that are disproportionately impacted by unemployment or underemployment? Are we able to track and monitor that data from the unemployment data?
The way the unemployment data are presented, especially at the county level, there's really no disaggregation of like who based on socioeconomic status or zip code. No, there's none of that. I believe there might be, if you go up to a state or a national level. I've have to check that, but it's very difficult to tell that on a county level. You can get some of that from like census estimates, but that would be giving you those are estimates, and they're lagged, so that none of that is going to be current. That's going to be from a year or two ago, about possibly even a 5-year average of something. So it's very hard to get that in current data at the county level. Yeah.
But you could get it from the state level to see how we're doing at the county level, like the Department of Labor.
I don't even know if they have. We do have microdata about their establishments and employment every quarter, but that doesn't tell us. It's literally just how many, is this a business and how many people does it have working at it and where is it, which, it's anonymous. We can't really report much of that in detail, but we don't, as far as I know, there isn't a way to get demographic information in like a quarterly, at a quarterly basis at a county level about like who's gaining jobs and who's.
I would think that we would be able to do that. We went to the job center in Wheaton. Department of Labor has office there. Their directors there. So I think it's something we can probably look into to see if that's even possible. Yeah.
But we can see if possibly they have certain, like, so it's available. Yeah, we can definitely get it at the national level, but we can see if maybe through their programs they may keep data. Workforce Montgomery, they may actually keep demographic data for some of the things they do. So it's possible that we can.
If we can better target some of our recruitment efforts, training programs for some of the industries and jobs that are lagging. I know that, the unemployment rate is a bit higher, slightly higher than it was pre-pandemic and last year. And so I don't know if we are doing anything to specifically target underemployment, unemployment through our programs that we offer through workforce development.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar about it. That's probably what WorkSource Montgomery would probably be the best to answer that.
I know they're housed with UBill, so.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for them without looking at the data. So they do track certain trends, but I would rather that to go back and confer with them directly.
Yes. Okay, good.
And then
All right.
I'll send you a note.
Okay. And then the demand for industrial and warehouse space, it looks like it's growing or decreasing.
Go back. Don't remember exactly.
I don't think we have industrial.
Did we do industrial? I don't
No, we
remember.
just did office and retail.
Okay. I will say that,
Only because we have such high vacancy commercial space, and we're talking about repurposing some of the commercial, vacant office space. If there is a demand, we've talked about repurposing it into housing, residential housing, but if there's a demand for industrial or warehouse space, is there an opportunity to convert any of these office buildings?
There is an opportunity. In fact, if you look at what the city of Rockville is doing, I sit on the Ready Board, and so part of the strategic plan is to identify industrial space in East Rockville. So there's an active effort, and there is a demand for that because space is so limited for that in this county that what we're trying to do is the equivalent of a heat map, which says here's where it is, and then we can actually market that.
and I think what when we do our master plans at planning, we're always asking this question, of course, like especially we're actually doing two in Councilmember Balcom's area that actually relate to some of the other questions that you had about the clusters there, but we're looking very closely in Germantown and Clarksburg about what to do with a vacant office building, and definitely industrial is part of that. And so we look at how do we possibly, what ways can we change the zoning so that we can encourage more uses of other, of things that previously hadn't been permitted there. And sometimes you can do certain biotech things in what would be considered, flex space that could be, under industrial. So that's something we're always looking at least on a local master plan basis.
That's more of a land use question, and that's something that we look at the PHP committee. The other light industry zones that we have in Leetonsville, we have some here in North Bethesda. When I worked on the White Flame 2 master plan, we have a light industry zone there too. In every plan that we worked on, we look into it. But I think it's a great question that you brought up, so people keep that in mind.
Yeah. And then, we're seeing a lot of closings with the retail stores. And are we tracking the certain industries that the retail stores are opening and closing, or the regions, geographic regions?
I want to say yes, we are doing that, but it may be a while till we give you the answer because we are using the Department of Labor data, and we're looking at where have over time we're looking specifically at the industry. Where have we seen the most increase in establishments? Where have we seen the most decrease, both geographically and in the specific industry? So that's an ongoing process. It's a very difficult data set to work with, so it takes some time, but that is something we are looking at and plan to be able to share at some point.
Good, because I know we spend a lot of money on marketing to commercial businesses, and I don't know, what the pain points are for our retail industries that we can assist with. So once we look at the data a bit more, it would be helpful to find out what their pain points are with staying open, hiring, or otherwise, so we can better support them.
I think just one thing to add on that, I do think right now the labor is a huge issue for retail and leisure and hospitality. I think that's one of the main issues. And I also think, not to say that there's definitely is a problem with it, but retail is also it tends to be a really high turnover type of industry. Unfortunately, most retail establishments and ventures just don't, tend to not last very long. So that is something that's it's hard, even through policy, kind of hard to, address that. But we can definitely look at some of those things, and I think labor force is a key issue at this point.
Okay. And then I had a question about the regions that we're seeing rapid growth or decline. Are there any particular regions? I know when Kelly did her presentation to us a few months ago, we saw rapid visitation with Pike and Rose. And so are there any areas in the county where we're seeing rapid job growth, rapid investments, or rapid decline, disinvestments?
again, we will be able, that's part of the analysis that we're doing with the DOL data, so we should be able to tell you, which areas are growing, especially with businesses and employment, faster than others. So.
And I'll ask one more question before we turn it over to Councilmember Glass. I was looking at the venture capital slide, and just wanted to know if there's any plans with MCDC about how we can attract more venture capital investments in our county. And I was really surprised by the $56 million investment that new company that's doing like the home health care, SNAP benefits. It sounds very similar to what our Health and Human Services Department is already doing. And so I just wanted to better understand, a company health, how we're attracting more. Are we looking to attract more?
It jumps all over the board in terms of specific companies.
Yeah.
With a company health, I would have to go back. Just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean that there's not the opportunity for that industry to expand here, because those businesses are not just working in this area, but the greater DMV, as an example.
Yeah. They were talking about jobs in Detroit. I don't know how many jobs they have here in Montgomery County, but it was specifically around behavioral health. And so.
Yeah, I'll just have to look it up.
Yeah, okay.
But
And just wanted to see if we have any strategies for attracting.
So in terms of venture capital,
Yeah.
so we work with the different venture capital groups. Here's the challenge, separate from what's happening with interest rates. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now. So as soon as the interest rates drop and there's a better business climate, and this is not Montgomery County specific, the money is there. And we've talked to several venture capitalists who are, or those who have access, and it's a question of waiting until the opportunity is right. But right now, the markets are relatively dry, but they will come back. And the question is, how do you do that? I don't know that we have, as MCEDC, the right tools or capabilities to sort of attract venture capital, except for the fact that we need to attract entrepreneurs. And if we attract entrepreneurs, then that's what attracts the venture capital. So that's where our focus would be, because you sort of follow the money will go after them. And then the question becomes, how advantageous is it to start a business in certain particular industries, whether it be life sciences or technology here versus San Francisco as an example, which is always, the Bay Area has always been off the charts in terms of venture capital. But to me, there is the opportunity to grow. I would not worry about these numbers right now.
Okay.
But as you look across the country, there are some areas who have gotten slightly more, but the trends tend to be the same. And so from my point of view, it is making sure that the entrepreneurs are here and then the venture capital will be here. We are also finding there is a trend, which is good for us, that suggests that the venture capitalists don't have to be in your backyard anymore. So that's why the Bay Area would always get lots of venture capital, and the companies would go there. Now, venture capitalists will invest across, let's call it state lines, so that those businesses, we want them to stay here. Typically what will happen is somebody picks up $100 million and then they move to wherever the venture capitalist is. That trend is changing, is evolving, such that we have the better opportunity to keep more of those businesses here.
I was just going to say briefly to
Go ahead.
to respond to Councilmember Sales that the health companies sounded somewhat like HHS.
Yes.
I think what's different is they're releasing technology. They have and telehealth, so they're doing virtual care as well as doing at-home care. Similarly, Limber Health is a health services firm, and they are using digital home exercise and remote monitoring. So it's different in terms of using forms of innovation and technology that the county may not be providing through its services. these companies, these other companies, as I also mentioned, are working with technology like High Labs, using a cloud-based platform to reduce healthcare operational costs. So I think we're in the right cluster, even though we just don't have as much investment that we want there.
No, very exciting. Thank you.
This conversation reminded me to remind you all that we're going to have that tour on incubators, because you're going to think about entrepreneurs and like attracting new talent and making sure that they know that we have a place to invest and to have your business, and then venture capitals will follow. One of the stops that we're going to have for that tour is Philadelphia. And I'll make sure you know so you can come with us. So that way you don't just travel with an executive, you can travel with us too.
And I'm assuming
Yeah.
you're working directly with the business center.
Yes.
Okay.
And with Judy Costello, so stay tuned on that one. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation and my colleagues' in-depth questions. So when Madam Ways spoke up during the presentation before, I was looking up some of the addresses, right, for the vacancy rates. And so that's why it opened up that app. And, glad to see that North Bethesda doing so incredibly well. It's a theme that we know exists, and to see it in this Q1 report having the largest decrease in vacancy rate. We need to continue learning and building upon that success. That's why information is important, and so we need to continue replicating that. Also in the real estate sector, appreciate the data regarding the average cost of housing here. What I think will be helpful moving forward, if we could break that down even further, because what is not stated in this data is the fact that single-family homes have reached an all-time high, selling for an average of $970,000. We are nearly at $1 million for a single-family home here in Montgomery County. Outrageously expensive. And so the 540 or more than $500,000, whatever that average might be when you factor in condos and townhouses, while still high as a median, if we could break it down by sector, I think that would be important. Question about venture capital, and appreciate Councilmember Sales' question. The data that, right here regarding venture capital, how do we quantify what that translates into? Does that translate into more leased space, more jobs? Clearly, these are, I presume, national and even international companies, so those investments might be made elsewhere. But is there an algorithm or formula to figure out what it means locally?
I don't know that I would call it an algorithm, but because we look at the individual companies, then we can track job growth. And typically they'll have in the announcement how many jobs are going to be created, or we can find information on whether they're leasing, how much space they are leasing. So it's not an algorithm. It would be a special report to look at. Are they really investing in the county in a big way, or is it not material in nature?
Do we regularly do that, or can we at a future conversation?
The answer is yes. So
Yeah.
to address two items, we would be happy to do that. Number one, and number two, back to the real estate question, I would just suggest that we do spend a half hour, however much time you want, at a future session breaking down the real estate market. You might also be interested in what is happening regionally with that. I'm going to go back to the real estate question for a second. What you pointed out, most people don't realize.
About North Bethesda?
No, about the real estate market and the cost of housing.
Oh, about single-family housing costs.
The whole region is a disaster. And we're not the worst, which is when we talk about expensive housing here. I think we have to be careful when we're trying to attract talent, not to point that out. It's the DMV that is expensive. Montgomery County is no more expensive than the region. If you move into Arlington or Alexandria, good luck. and Fairfax County is slightly higher. So from a competitive point of view, when people say, well, Montgomery County is too expensive when we're attracting talent without putting it into perspective, we want to talk about both sides of the argument. Now, it is too expensive to attract all the talent we need. You're not going to get school teachers or firefighters. You know that very well. But looking at those trends in specific markets and by type is well worth doing. So back to the venture capital, we're happy to pull something together that's.
Yeah, clearly it is something to be proud of, the investments and the ideas and brain power that are generating these levels of investment. But looking at that next level, I think is important as well, as we try to creatively incentivize more of it, right? So what's the return there? And then, going back to the housing costs that were referenced, I absolutely agree with everything that you just said, and recognizing that we are part of a region, and that if we do want more housing that is affordable, we need more housing. And for teachers, going back to what Councilmember Sales, her question about the growth occupations, it'd be interesting to get the actual answer if there is one. My interpretation of that is turnover, right? And so every time someone retires or leaves the system and they hire a replacement, that technically counts as a new job. Is that a correct assessment? Because we are not creating that many new positions, meaning new elementary schools throughout the county.
No, it's, well, I don't think that. I think it's really net. It's looking at net jobs as far. Let me just make sure the data source. What is that jobs EQ?
That's on circle page 2. Circle 2.
My impression, and again, I don't do the jobs EQ, but from what I understand of jobs EQ, is that it actually is a net change measure. Taking how many teachers did you have in 2020, fourth quarter 2023? Now how many do you have in fourth quarter 2024? And that's it. Which I agree seems large. And I think we can look at jobs EQ. It could be, I believe we use that because it's the way to get the most updated occupational analysis, but maybe there's something we need to
having just done the budget. I know we all know that is not a direct correlation, at least for Montgomery County Public Schools. Can't speak for any of the other private institutions that we have, but I remain suspect of that. So okay, so if there is some information out there somewhere, but I would guess that turnover would account, but if you're arguing that might not be the case, it warrants another conversation. That's all I really have. And then for this, because everyone asked those really good questions, but going back to the point I made during the presentation about the office vacancy rate, if we could figure out some metric or bring some a data point or two for next week when we have the public hearing on the MOVE Act, I think that would be helpful for everybody. And if someone is not signed up to testify for that, I think this is a reminder for everybody that these numbers, whichever one we choose, are still too high, and we need to. Yeah.
I wanted to remember, you're talking about the CBRE number versus.
That is correct. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I just want to also highlight that the attainable housing conversation is coming to the PHP committee where I serve, and the first work session is on July 8th in the afternoon. So if you're really interested in learning more on how we can tackle the affordable housing question and understanding the need of creating more housing for people of every single income, and the need of creating duplexes, triplexes. If you care about that, then you need to say yes to this. So July 8th. With that, I don't think we have any more follow-up questions. This was great. I want to thank Mr. Ali for all your work. And I know the next quarterly work session that we're going to have. We're going to have a lead of, our report will be a little different from this one. Getting more detailed information, especially after the questions that we had, make sure that we cover some of it on the report. Thank you so much for the planning department and to the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. I like to say the whole name, for your participation. And this meeting is adjourned.